And lots going on today. There'll be more people on the grounds. It's free for kids. And also today, lots of concerts this evening.
As the death toll rises, the questions intensify over what happened in the Texas Hill Country. This is Now You Know. I'm Rob Snow.
All the news you need to know.
This is Now You Know with Rob Snow on News Radio.
The news is getting more bleak by the day from the Texas Hill Country. The death toll from the July 4th weekend flooding disaster stands at 111. More than 160 people remain missing in Kerr County alone, with at least a dozen more missing across other parts of the state. Speaking in Hunt, Texas, the state's governor, Greg Abbott, said the top priority for now remains trying to find everyone affected by the flood.
The hearts of our fellow Texans are breaking every single day because of what people of this community and the surrounding area are going through. There's nothing more important on our hearts and minds than the people of this community, especially those who are still lost. I told them what we were doing, not just today, but what we are going to be doing for the days, weeks, and months to come. This is what they needed to hear. They need to know Texas is in this with the people in the Hill Country right here. We are not leaving until this job is finished.
But there are many questions for public officials, such as who was in charge of monitoring the weather and warning about the potential for a flash flood. Governor Abbott suggested now is not the time for finger pointing.
My focus isn't on trying to say, oh, you did wrong or you should have done better there. My job is to bring Texas and Texans together and make sure that we immediately start delivering on solutions. You talk about the heroic effort, and no one has seen the level of response as what Texas has provided over the past 4 days or so. And we continue to maintain that response here while also going to the state capitol and working on around-the-clock responses there to make sure that we do deliver real solutions for these people sitting right behind you.
The Trump administration is also facing questions about how this happened and whether budget cuts at the U.S. National Weather Service may have played a role. President Trump welcomed the news media into parts of his cabinet meeting yesterday. He praised his administration's fast response and said he'll travel to Texas on Friday.
I think a lot of lives have been saved. That could have been as bad as it was, and you could have lost double or triple. This thing was just really horrible. Well, congratulations on a great job, and I appreciate it. I know you're going down. I'll be going down on Friday with First Lady. We'll be taking a trip, and we don't want to get in anyone's way because that's what happens. The president goes and everyone's around focused on. I don't want anyone to focus on us, but it's possible they could have somebody saved still. There's a lot of areas. It's a big area, and probably unlikely at this point, but there could be. They're thinking there could be the possibility, but what a tragic situation.
There are reports today that just 2 days before the disaster, a state inspector visited Camp Mystic. That's the youth camp where at least 27 people died. That inspector certified the camp had an emergency plan in place. What's not known is how closely it was followed. Among the survivors of the flood is a man named Christian Fell, who stood on top of a hydrometer for 3 hours, hoping to be rescued.
It definitely is I think a blessing that the meter box was there, because I don't even think I remembered that was on that side of the building. So as I started to climb it, I just realized I needed to get out of the water as quickly as I could and just find something to hold on to so the water couldn't take me away. And I just saw cars getting carried away with their hazard lights flashing on and off, and industrial-sized propane tanks just floating down through a park that used to be there.
One man is being praised, being called a hero for his role in the rescue effort. Petty Officer Scott Ruskin is a rescue swimmer with the U.S. Coast Guard. He and his team are being credited with saving 165 people. He told CNN what it was like when they first arrived at Camp Mystic.
We heard there was about 200 campers there, and they were in need of airlift. There was no other way to get them out. Bridges were gone, roadways were gone, and the water was coming up too high for boat rescue. So the only option was airlift. We kind of assessed the scene a little bit, had an internal crew discussion with the rest of the crew, with Ian, Blair, and Seth and myself. We decided the best course of action would probably be to leave me there. At the time, there was no triage coordinator, and just because, it was kind of hectic. A lot of people were needed on other assets and other airframes. We just decided that, hey, we can fit a couple extra kids if we leave me on scene. That aircrew with Ian, Blair, and Seth kind of went to a more dangerous location to try to, airlift a few more people out of a tighter landing zone. And they were able to airlift about 15 people, 15 children out of there. And they left me on scene at Camp Mystic. And there, I kind of helped facilitate some of the organization and the triage, just comforting these kids.
According to a report from the Associated Press today, local officials in that part of Texas had asked for years for some kind of flood warning system. It went so far as to request a $1 million grant for such a system, but it was a request that was turned down by FEMA. I'm Rob Snow. This is Now You Know, and this is News Radio.
There is no question Rob won't get answered.
Now You Know with Rob Snow continues
On News Radio.
They wanted to seize territory in Quebec. That's among the many accusations against some current and former members of the Canadian Armed Forces. According to the RCMP, these men wanted to set up an anti-government and anti-authority militia to achieve their goals. Now they're facing charges of facilitating terrorist activity, along with various charges involving a massive cache of firearms and ammunition that's been seized. Phil Gurski is with us. He's the president and CEO of Borealis Threat and Risk Consulting. He's a former senior strategic analyst at CSIS. Welcome back, Phil. Great to hear from you. What's your reaction to this news?
Several reactions. I think, like a lot of Canadians, it comes as a bit of a shock. But I think, Rob, I'll start off with a real good news story, is that if you remember what came out yesterday, the Mounties seized the weapons a year and a half ago in January of 24. So this suggests to me that it was a long-standing investigation, that the RCMP had these guys covered up the yin yang. They probably obviously had surveillance. They probably were monitoring their social media, probably through some Part 6 intercept warrants, maybe even had some human agents involved in that. So, as serious as the allegations are, I think the Mounties had this one covered pretty well. And I don't think there was any real threat to Canadian public safety because of the professionalism and the depth of the investigation the Mounties had in these guys. So I think we should, we tip our hats to the Mounties today on having done a good job.
Yeah, in fact, the Integrated National Security Enforcement Team of the Mounties began monitoring them in March of 2023. So more than 2 years ago now, as you mentioned. Phil, why do you think it's just coming to light now then?
Yeah, that was my first, when I found out that weapons had been seized in January, and like you said, the investigation dates, I even heard back to 2021, in fact, when they first crossed their radar. Kind of curious. When I was at CSIS, I was involved in investigations that were well over a year in the making. It strikes me as possibly they let it run as long as they did, first of all, to get as much evidence as possible, because when you want the Crown involved in trials, you want a slam dunk, right? You want to get a guilty plea or a guilty verdict. So the more evidence you have, the better. Secondly, they were confident that they were monitoring to the extent where there was no threat to public safety. And, I've been involved in investigations where, when you think you might be losing control, that's when you pounce, because you don't want, one thing to be missed and someone ends up involved in a possible attack posture. So I think that investigations do take time. It's not like watching Netflix, Rob, where it's all over in 48 minutes. But I think they knew what they were doing, and they were confident that they had them covered sufficiently enough to ensure the public was never in danger.
You mentioned your career as an investigator and an analyst, and certainly you've spent time studying the threat from Islamist terror organizations and terror groups. Yeah. When you look at what was happening here and say that threat, the Islamist terror threat, what similarities are there?
There are a lot of similarities, excuse me, Rob. When it comes to terrorism, it's an act of violence that's planned or perpetrated for some kind of an ideology, be it Islamist, be it far right, be it far left, be it Sikh terrorism, as we've seen here in Canada historically, Tamil terrorism, et cetera, et cetera. Those are the commonalities. The other commonality is that, generally speaking, with the exception of lone actors, people tend to congregate out, like so birds of a feather flock together, right? These guys would have somehow found themselves, be it within the military, at the local bar, maybe in online forums and social media. They found they had similar attitudes, in this case, what we call anti-authoritarianism, anti-government feelings, and they eventually decided, hey, we're going to do something about this. So, there's no common thread to how someone becomes radicalized, but there certainly are some commonalities in terms of the belief system, how they congregate, how they find each other, and how they decide to get together and actually plan something. So irrespective of what the actual ideology is, you can pretty well bet the mortgage that you're going to see some commonalities across those different fronts.
Okay. As we mentioned, this is an investigation that's been 2 years in the making, but do you think there's anything else investigators would want to know? And if so, what would that be?
Who else was involved? So let me give you an analogy, Rob. The Toronto 18 way back in 05, 06. Only 18 people were arrested and charged at the end of the day. That investigation was much larger than 18 people, but the Crown decided they'd only get a guilty, result in 18 cases. So if I was the RCMP, and more importantly, the Canadian military, who else knew about them? Who else might share similar feelings? And now that these guys have been wrapped up, are there other potential cells down the road that might want to engage in similar behavior? So, yeah, this investigation's done. But I'm pretty sure there are other things, other tentacles out there that they're going to want to hunt down and make sure we don't have something of equal danger to the public, and make sure we have eyes on those guys as well.
Okay. I mean, militia movements are certainly not new. We've heard about them, for example, in the United States when we talk about things like the Oklahoma City bombing and the Waco and things like that. But a militia movement or a militia ideology, if you will, in Canada, you think this is just an isolated thing?
Yeah, it's a great question, and I'm going to be careful because as you're aware, I'm more of a jihadi guy than a right wing guy. But I do think it's rather limited. I think there's been a worrying increase of late, but we're not talking U.S. levels, or we're not talking levels in Germany where so much of the German military has neo-Nazi ideologies. I'm not dismissing it, Rob. These guys were serious, but at the same time, I mean, how capable were they? They were recruiting on Instagram, Rob. I mean, the concept wasn't the greatest. And yeah, they had weapons because they're members of the military. But I don't think people should panic and the sky's falling, the sky's falling. The RCMP got them. There's probably similar investigations, but let's not blow this out of proportion. Let's not say that the military is riven with militias and potential plots like this. I have my faith in the institutions that are there that they'll do this. We'll keep monitoring it, and we'll probably hear more cases down the road. But let's not pretend that this is sort of the end of civilization as we know it.
Okay. Phil Gurski, always great to hear from you and get your insight.
Pleasure.
Thank you so much.
Pleasure, Rob. Bye-bye. Have a good day.
Yeah, you too. President and CEO, Borealis Threat and Risk Consulting, former senior strategic analyst at CSIS, Phil Gurski. I'm Rob Snow. This is Now You Know. This is News Radio.
Now You Know with Rob Snow returns on News Radio.
Well, it's time for our Newsday panel, and we are welcoming back Garry Keller, who is Vice President of Strategy Corps. How are you, Garry?
I'm great, Rob. Great to be with you again.
Yeah, it's great to hear from you, Garry. It's been a long time. And Ashton Arsenault is partner at Crestview Strategy. Welcome back to you, Ashton, as well. Great to hear from you. Hope summer's going well. The Carney Liberals and cabinet ministers being ordered to find ambitious savings in government operations. What trouble do you see ahead for this new Liberal government? For example, what do you think the reaction will be from the voting public or from the public sector unions? Garry, why don't you take that one?
Well, I have to laugh at the beginning simply because we were told for the last months, if not years, that Poilievre's cuts would just destroy the public service and undermine Canadians' faith in government. And the Globe and Mail story that comes out the other day says the kind of cuts that Mr. Carney is envisioning would make Stephen Harper's deficit reduction action plan look like a walk in the park. So I think Canadians are going to be very interested in watching this. I think the public sector unions will be gearing up for a battle like you've never seen. And I have to wonder, if you look at the voting in Ottawa, and the Ottawa ridings, they almost all went Liberal, and massively Liberal because the public service was scared. Like 60%, 60 to 30. Yeah. And they were scared into voting Liberal because they were told, oh, Mr. Poilievre's going to make all these cuts. Well, guess what? Chickens are coming home to roost now, and I think it's going to be a very, very interesting time ahead.
I mean, Garry, not to, maybe oversell that, but I think that played a role in why Pierre Poilievre didn't win in his own Ottawa area riding.
Absolutely.
Was that fear-mongering campaign, right?
Absolutely. Totally agree with that 100%. And Mr. Fanjoy and his Liberal team were very, very adept at trying to exploit those fears. But at the same time, when Mr. Harper made his deficit reduction cuts in 2015, the public service was already rejecting those cuts. And I think in a lot of ways, I was thinking that the Ottawa ridings might be lost to the Conservatives for a generation. Now I'm not so sure about that because, like I said, what the Globe and Mail says that Mr. Carney's envisioning would make any deficit reduction plan that Mr. Harper had proposed or taken action on look like a walk in the park.
Yeah. As I said, Ashton Arsenault is with us, partner at Crestview Strategies. And Ashton, what trouble do you see ahead as as the Carney government moves ahead, tries to find ambitious savings in government operations?
Well, I think off the top, credit where credit's due. I think we're long overdue on something like this. And at the end of the day, TAB always has to get paid one way or another. We all know how bad the debt servicing costs have become. And it's no secret the Trudeau government spent like drunken sailors after hitting it big at the craps table. And, look, they somehow managed to add more than 100,000 public servants to the TAB's tab with zero checks and balances. And, guess what? The books are cooked. And I think we're looking at a pretty grim budget in the fall. And look, the target of 7.5% across the board, to Garry's point, these are some deep, deep, deep reductions across the board. And I haven't really encountered someone whose salary isn't paid by the federal government who honestly believes the public service and the programs they support run efficiently or without waste, because that would be a ridiculous position to take. And Garry's seen it firsthand. I've seen it firsthand. There's a lot of waste. And look, on the flip side, the labor unions are already sharpening their knives. Immediately sounded the alarm bell, floated around the dreaded austerity word. Look, I would say they have a job to do at the end of the day, and no doubt to me that they will become an immediate thorn in the government's side over the next couple of months.
Yeah. I'm thinking back to the last two rounds of what I would call government austerity. The big one was in the mid-90s, of course, with Prime Minister Chrétien and Paul Martin as his Minister of Finance, and Don Drummond was the top minister in the top deputy minister in the Department of Finance, went on to be the chief economist at the Toronto Dominion Bank, now at the C.D. Howe Institute. Dramatic cuts. Some department, like the industry department budget was cut by 50%, for example. I remember John Manley being told, you have to find 50% savings in the industry department. There seemed to be, though, this recognition in the general public that it was going to be hard, but it was something that needed to be done. 45,000 public servants were let go. 8,000 people were laid off at the CBC. The Harper downsizing, if you want to call that, I thought was rather modest by comparison. And yet still you had the public service unions. I remember they rented a plane. You may remember that. They rented a plane that had a banner. It flew around the Peace Tower in Ottawa. Harper hates me. Harper hates me. Right? Do you remember? And, that parliamentary page holding up a sign during the budget that said, or the throne speech that said, stop Harper. Do you remember? I just wonder where we're going to get in the say the next year or so. Is this something that the public is going to largely buy into and accept that it needs to be done? Or are there going to be howls of outrage? What do you think, Garry?
Well, it's a good question, and I think that what we've seen in the election campaign, both Mr. Carney and Mr. Poilievre were proposing cuts to the size of the public service. And what Ashton has said, yes, there needs to be cuts. There needs to be cuts to the size. It has grown completely out of control based largely on Mr. Trudeau and the people around him, their philosophy of government. Now, remember, a lot of those people are still around, so it'll be interesting how they try to square this circle. But as I said, 80% of people voted for parties that were, or 85% of people voted for parties who were proposing reductions of some size. So Mr. Carney has a moment in time right now. He has the ability in the short term to make these cuts, probably with the approval of the vast majority of the public. But he'll have to move fast, because if it drags on, and the other question is, if services are impacted even more negatively than they were in the past, then Canadians may say, well, what are you actually doing here? Another interesting point, Michael Sabia, the new clerk of the Privy Council, which started today, he would have been around during some of those times in the Chrétien Martin era, so he has some experience in dealing with these types of cuts. So it'll be interesting to see how they manage that.
You agree with that, Ashton? What do you think?
I do. I think there's a public appetite for this at the moment. I agree with moving quickly, and I think there's a big difference between what the public may or may not think and what these public sector unions are going to think, and their, quite frankly, ideological predilection, right? And so I think you've fairly pointed out the differences between what happened in the 90s and what happened in the 2000s with Harper, and public sector unions are going to public sector union, but I think it largely boils down to a communications exercise, right? And I think if the government can accurately portray to Canadians what they're going to get out of this and why it's necessary, then I think the time's right. Yeah.
Okay. All right. We'll be right back. I mean, none of us are New Democrats, but we're going to do our own autopsy. What went wrong for the New Democrats in the most recent election campaign? I'm Rob Snow. This is Now You Know. This is News Radio.
Critical thinking is not dead.
Now You Know with Rob Snow
Returns on News Radio.
With our Newsday panelists today, Garry Keller, Vice President of Strategy Corps, Ashton Arsenault, partner at Crestview Strategy. Now, none of us are dippers, but the NDP is now going to start doing its autopsy. What went wrong for the NDP during the election campaign? Gosh, where do you start with that? What are some of the things that you think went wrong for the NDP during the election, Garry?
Well, I actually think it goes way before the election campaign. The decision by the New Democrats to keep Mr. Trudeau propped up, even after they backed out of the supply and confidence agreement, I think will go down as one of the most disastrous decisions in Canadian political history, because they could have taken down Mr. Trudeau in the fall. They could have ran an election campaign against both Mr. Poilievre and Mr. Trudeau, run that campaign saying, we're the true progressive alternative. Mr. Trudeau is tapped out. He's not a real progressive. They probably could have formed the official opposition party. Instead, they waited and they waited and they waited and they waited too long, and all of a sudden they weren't running against Mr. Trudeau. They were running against Mr. Carney, and they missed the moment. I mean, I think that's the first step in the process, why they took that decision. And then, there's a lot of questions throughout that campaign. They say they ran a fully costed campaign. I'm not sure about that. I was a candidate in this most recent election for the Conservatives, and myself and a number of other candidates noticed almost no New Democratic presence whatsoever, very little spending. And so if they did, in fact, spend the maximum allowed under the cap that Elections Canada provides, they've got some huge explaining to do why they made that decision instead of trying to save some of the furniture.
That Fred Delory, I don't know if did you guys read that Fred Delory Substack yesterday on just how desperate financially it is for the NDP? I mean, that the NDP could be financially devastated because of this election. I mean, it's really, really bad. But Ashton, what do you think went wrong? What are some of the things that went wrong for the New Democrats during the election campaign?
I agree with most of that. I have an opening question for the postmortem, and it's what went right. Don't even start with what went wrong, because I don't think you'll ever finish the review. Fundraising was garbage. Ground game was garbage. Their leadership was garbage. Their inability to distinguish themselves from the Liberals, as Garry said, or explain why they propped up the government was garbage. It's a long list. As you just pointed out, Rob, everyone knows the party's probably dealing with some rather serious financial challenges, which, could eventually credit the party. It's not a good time over there. And look, I think the way that they can at least attempt to start to pull themselves out of this mess is by leaving any and all Liberal support in the rear view and doing what it can to position themselves as an actual progressive alternative. I almost want to say get back to the roots, stand for something, anything really. I would start there. I think, they perhaps are aided after they go through what I suspect is going to be a bit of a painful leadership process.
Okay. You agree with that, Garry? Kind of get back to the grassroots, like a standalone kind of, union-driven kind of working class left-wing Labor Party?
Yeah, they do have to get back to that, and I do reflect, and the comments made about the fundraising that Ashton made, very, very true. Almost 300 ridings out of 343 in the country are not getting a rebate back from Elections Canada, which is the lifeblood between election campaigns to keep riding associations and local campaigns going. That is what I like to call a nuclear financial winter. For the NDP, and they'll have to solve that, and that's not easy to raise money when you're in a situation like that. But yes, there's going to be room. Mr. Carney is obviously governing from the center right, so there's going to be room on the left for an alternative, and it's going to take a number of elections to get there. But Jack Layton was successful in eventually getting there after about 4 elections, where they did create that room and were seen as the left-wing alternative. And Mr. Layton was more than happy to go to war with a succession of Liberal Party leaders and not embrace them like Mr. Singh did.
Okay, we'll be right back, and we'll start with Ashton on this question. Is Pierre Poilievre yesterday's man? I'm Rob Snow. It's our News Day panel. This is News Radio.
The 660 News Radio Groundworks Traffic and Weather Center, I'm Leo Ernewine. In the Northwest, a caller let us know about a crash involving a motorbike on westbound Stony Trail just south of Country Hills Boulevard. The crash is blocking multiple lanes, causing delays building back from the pedestrian bridge all the way onto the Country Hills off-ramp to Stony, so anticipate some delays there. Also in the Northwest, we got a crash on southbound Sarcee Trail at Crowchild Trail, this one blocking the far right-hand lane, though traffic seems to be getting by without too much issue. In the Northeast, there's a collision on southbound Deerfoot Trail at 16th Ave. This one's blocking the right shoulder and slowing traffic down as well. Traffic brought to you by Village Honda. Set a course for endless exploration. The all-new Honda Passport has landed at Village Honda. See it, drive it. It's here, just in time for summer. Visit Village Honda today. And now time for a quick forecast from Environment Canada. Mix of sun and clouds today with a 30% chance of showers late this afternoon and a risk of thunderstorms as well. Daytime highs near 28 and lows around 10. Right now in Calgary, it's mostly cloudy. We're sitting at 20 degrees. More traffic and weather every 10 minutes.
At first glance, one might call this a staircase. But in a Calbridge home, it's a sculptural marvel. This masterpiece transcends function, providing an uplifting and downlifting experience. Paradoxically, both ways lead to a state of pure splendor. This is more than a staircase, more than a house. It's a Calbridge. See the full collection at itsacalbridge.com.
Measles outbreaks are occurring in Canada, including Alberta. These outbreaks are highly preventable. Measles is an extremely contagious disease that is spread easily through the air. The best way to protect yourself, your family, and your community is to ensure you are up to date with your immunizations. Don't get measles. Get immunized. Visit alberta.ca/measles to find out if you're up to date and what to do if you're not. A message from the Government of Alberta.
Why call 2 men in a truck? If you're like most people, you're moving and you work hard. You've got lots of stuff and no time to move it. You need pros, trained, professional moving experts to do the heavy lifting for you. A team who will work hard and get the job done right. People who care about your things as much as you do. Time is of the essence, and you want it done fast. That's why you call Two Men and a Truck, the movers who care. Visit twomeninatruck.com today and get moving.
2 Men in a Truck.
Over 613,000 Canadian small businesses use TikTok to grow and succeed, like Chez Mag Fine Canteen on Ile d'Orléans in Quebec, who went from feeding crowds to feeding the local economy. Or Smudge the Blades in Fort Saskatchewan, Alberta, who uses TikTok to grow their business while supporting Indigenous youth. Visit TikTokCanada.ca to learn more about how TikTok is helping small businesses in Canada make a big impact.
When you're looking for something new, fresh, and a little different, you head to the Crossroads Market.
Check off your grocery list stall by stall. Our indoor farmers market sells fresh fruits and vegetables, baked goods, cheese from around the world, fresh and frozen meats, fish, seafood, and much more.
The Crossroads Market, serving Calgary since 1987. Local artisans, breweries, distilleries, and international foods. Open Fridays through Sundays from 9 to 5. Visit crossroadsmarket.ca.
CFFR AM.
A Rogers radio station.
660 News Radio Calgary. Now you know with Rob Snow continues on News Radio.
It's our Newsday panel. Garry, Keller, Ashton, Arsenault are with us. So I asked this to a couple of our progressive friends yesterday, Jeff Turner and Cam Holmstrom. If I said to you, Pierre Poilievre is yesterday's man, what would you say? Pierre Poilievre is yesterday's man. What would you say? Ashton, Arsenault, what would you say?
I would say, were you at the Calgary Stampede this past weekend? Because he still had a rock star's welcome out there. Yeah, look, I think we've brought this up before. It's been a challenging few months for Mr. Poilievre. He'd probably be the first one to tell you that. Just the damage of, losing that seat and not having the ability to go into the House and hold the Prime Minister to account directly, I think is a little bit damaging. And I think that dynamic, of course, changes after he ends up winning this by-election here later this summer, August 18th, I believe. And I think that's where sort of the rebuild and the path to what happens next really starts. Because until such a time, it's just very, very difficult. And, I think you can tell he's a little bit uncomfortable with the current situation. So is he yesterday's man? Ask me at the end of January next year, Rob.
At the end of January, okay.
Yeah.
Because he'll be back in the House. There will have been a budget by then, and he'll certainly be in his element, right?
And he will most likely, at least if I'm reading the tea leaves correctly, have been, reaffirmed as the leader by the membership of the party. So once he gets through January, I don't think he is yesterday's man. No, I don't.
I mean, there's certainly a lot of, sniping behind the scenes, and insiders are telling me this and staffers are saying that, but they're not speaking on the record. And nobody is standing in front of a microphone as a member of the Conservative caucus saying Pierre Poilievre's got to go. Like, nobody is saying that. So what does that say? I don't know. Is Pierre Poilievre yesterday's man? What would you say, Garry Keller?
Well, it's interesting. We kicked off this story, this segment, talking about the need to reduce the size of the public service. That's just one of many different examples of policy proposals that Mark Carney and the Liberals have stolen right out of the Conservative Party playbook. So from a policy perspective, or if you're asking me if he's yesterday's man, I'd say, well, look at what the Liberals are doing. They're actually adopting Mr. Poilievre's policy proposals almost holus bolus, and in some cases even going further than he was proposing. So on that front, no, absolutely not. I agree that losing the seat was not ideal, and not being in the House of Commons is not ideal. But again, it was 4 weeks in May, right after the election. There's a lot of time to reflect over the summer. Yes, the party does have to do a postmortem. There are questions that have to be asked about the campaign and how it was conducted, and obviously the refusal to pivot until late in the campaign is a big question. But to Ashton's point, look, we know he's going to face a leadership review. It's in the party constitution. That is just a fact of life. And I suspect that he will win that leadership review. The question will be by what size. So, no, I do not think so. And I always also remember that in 2004, when Mr. Harper lost and was being derided as yesterday's man, he took the time, he came back, and he won the 2006 election, paving the way forward.
Okay. Great to hear from both of you. Enjoy the rest of your summer if we don't speak soon, but great to hear from you again. Thanks, Garry. Thanks, Ashton. Bye-bye. Yeah. Ashton Arsenault from Crestview Strategy, Garry Keller from Strategy Core. Talkback. We're talking about affordable housing on Talkback today. Hope you'll join the discussion after the news.
It's time to talk back.
On Now You Know with Rob Snow.
Call now.
And have your say.
1-833-668-2577.
Welcome to Talkback. 2 hours of debate and discussion on the big issues of the day. And today we're going to talk about affordable housing. And by affordable housing, we don't mean social housing or government housing, but rather what is that price point that would make a unit of housing affordable? And that's what we want to ask you today. We just want to talk about dollars and cents today. We want to talk about apartments, and we want to talk about starter homes. And I mean, here's what we want to know today. It's not terribly complicated. Here's a question for you. What would the monthly rent have to be for a one-bedroom apartment for you to consider it to be affordable where you live? What's that number? One-bedroom apartment, monthly rent, I can afford that. What's that number? Give that some thought and give me a call. Nothing fancy. One bedroom, one bathroom, maybe somewhere between 500, 700 square feet. What would a monthly rent be that you would consider to be affordable? A monthly expense that you could say, okay, I could swing that. Is it $1,000 a month? Does it have to be less than that? Is it $1,500 a month? Is it more than that? Just give us a ballpark number. And when you think of that number, how does that number compare to what one-bedroom apartments are going for where you live? Whether you're in Halifax or in Southern Ontario or in Southern Alberta. What is an affordable monthly rent for a one-bedroom apartment? Give that some thought. Give us a call, 1-833-668-2577. We have lines available now. Here's another question for you. We're going to talk about starter homes as well, I hope, with you today, with your help. What would a starter home have to be priced at for you to consider it to be affordable? Starter home. What's that number? Starter home. Okay. Is it, I don't know, $150,000, $200,000? Less than that? $250,000, $300,000, $400,000, $500,000? More than that? I don't know. Somewhere in between. Starter home. Think first house, nothing fancy. Maybe, I don't know, 1,200 square feet on the high side. Maybe 2 or 3 bedrooms. Maybe 2 bathrooms. Maybe 2 bathrooms. And maybe that's an older detached home, fixer-upper. Maybe it's a townhouse, a row house, a stacked, a condo. Starter home. What would you consider to be an affordable price for a starter home? And then when you think about that price for starter homes, what's the usual, say, going price for a starter home where you live or in the surrounding area? There are a few things that have been in the news this week that are prompting us to ask these questions about housing and housing affordability today. First of all, new report from Canada Mortgage and Housing, CMHC. It's about the rental market. Just came out yesterday. It's mostly good news. Monthly rents are either falling in many parts of the country or where rents are still climbing, they're not going up as much as they used to. But we can get more into the numbers as we make our way through the program from that report. Also coming out yesterday was a report on rents from the real estate website rentals.ca. It's a monthly report from them. Latest report for June says monthly rents fell last month across the country. 8th consecutive monthly decline. Rents down 3% year over year, but they're coming off record highs. So rents are 6% higher than they were 2 years ago and 12% higher than they were 3 years ago. And now, according to this report, the average rent for a one-bedroom apartment in Canada, the average rent, $2,129 a month. $2,129 a month for a one-bedroom apartment. That's the national average, okay? Some cities are cheaper than that. Some are a lot more expensive. But going from east to west, according to this report, one-bedroom apartment in Halifax is now renting, on average, $2,064 a month. $2,064 a month for a one-bedroom apartment in Halifax. In Kitchener, same one-bedroom apartment renting for $1,828 a month, $1,828. And in Calgary, the same one-bedroom apartment going for $1,591. Let's round it up and call it $1,600 a month, one-bedroom apartment in Calgary. So who knows? Hey, pack up, leave Halifax, move to Calgary, maybe you save $500 a month in rent. But are these rents affordable, right? Are these rents affordable? That's what we want to know today. And if they're not, what is a monthly rent that you would consider to be affordable? Now, a few weeks ago, a report came out about Canadians trying to buy starter homes. This report was done by a firm called Point 2 Homes. And that report concluded that renters in 36 of Canada's 50 largest cities couldn't afford to buy a starter home in the city where they're renting an apartment. And it also said that the inventory of starter homes in the 14 cities where renters could afford a starter home is close to zero. So even though people could afford one, there just aren't any available. Prices for starter homes, for our purposes today, according to this report, Halifax starter home, $248,450, $248,450. In Kitchener, $371,400, and in Calgary, $275,400 prices for starter homes in those cities, according to this report. Sound about right to you? And what kind of property do you get for those prices? And are they affordable? Do you consider those price points affordable for starter homes? If not, what would be? What would be affordable? Let's kick it around for a couple of hours, people. Talk about trying to keep a roof over our heads, trying to maybe get out of renting an apartment and into a first home. What's affordable? What's affordable? What do you consider to be affordable housing? One-bedroom apartment or starter homes? Phone lines open now. The call-in line. 1-833-668-2577. 1-833-668-2577. If you've never called before, just mention that to us. We'll make your call a priority as we talk about housing affordability. I'm Rob Snow. This is Now You Know. It's Talkback on News Radio.
Have something on your mind you want everyone to know?
Call now.
Hello.
1-833-668-2577.
It's Talkback on Now You Know with Rob Snow.
Talking about housing affordability today, one-bedroom apartments, starter homes. What would the rent have to be on a one-bedroom apartment to be affordable? What would you say? Just give us a ballpark number. Let's kick this around. And on starter homes, it's always hard to find data on starter homes. The government doesn't really keep track of, say, starter homes officially. There's no real starter home data. But look, when you think about a starter home, what would a price point be for a starter home, you think, these days, that you would consider to be affordable? 1-833-668-2577. 1-833-668-2577, our topic for the day. 3 lines available there for you. The wait won't be too long at all. Let's go to Eric is in Halifax today. Hello, Eric.
Hey, good afternoon, Rod.
Hey, Eric, how are you?
Very good.
Good.
I pay just under $1,200 a month for one large bedroom.
Wow,
and I wish there was only 2 weeks. I'm not being sarcastic or I'm not talking stupid, but I wish there was only 2 weeks in a month because the other 2 weeks I can't make it. I mean, I have to turn to resources that I thought I'd never have to do. I mean, one of them was a couple of years ago I had to claim bankruptcy. Well, I never want to go that route again. But I would think that when I first moved in here and been here now almost 8 years, I was paying $9.95, which wasn't too bad. But,
right.
I was working with the city of Halifax, so I was making good money. But now, with the pension checks and stuff like that, I get $35,000 a year, which is nothing to write home about. I was making $35,000 a year 20 years ago when I worked with the city. So, and as far as a house starting goes, I bought my first house at $120,000.
Wow.
Okay?
How long ago was that, Eric? How long ago was that? $120,000 house.
3 years ago.
And where was it?
And that was out in Enfield, Elmsdale. It was getting built.
Oh, yeah, by the Halifax airport out that way, right? Yeah.
You're right, yeah.
Yeah, okay.
But I mean, I had a nice semi-detached. I had a in-law suite. I mean, I had it all. But, anyway, that's another story. But I could have... I think anybody, it takes two. You need two people to be working, and I think a starting price would be anywhere from 150 to 175. I mean, I think
50 to
people could do that, but
175.
you have to have two people working.
Right. Okay. So just let me run this number by you. What do you think about this? The average one-bedroom apartment in Halifax is going for more than $2,000 a month now.
Yeah, it's outrageous. It's outrageous. I mean, there's a place down the road that used to be the Roundhouse, they called it, and now the company from Ontario built it up, and they're starting for a one-bedroom, $2,100. And, I mean, it's outrageous. I mean, you'd think we got problems now with people living on the streets and no place to go. You wait. It's going to get worse instead of it gets better because there's just not enough money out there, and affordable housing, they ain't making affordable housing. Look up affordable in the dictionary and see what it says. They're not looking at affordable housing. They're looking at housing for the rich and famous and for people. I remember when I was a cleaner at one of the apartment buildings over here where I live, I went in and there was 7 people laying on the floor.
Oh my gosh. Okay.
I'm not kidding, Rob.
No, I know that. Yeah. All right. Thank you, Eric. I'm going to run and move along to the next caller. Some lines available there, 1-833-668-2577. Ken in Calgary is up next. Hello, Ken. Hi, Ken.
Hi, it's Ben.
Ben. Yeah. Okay. Sorry about that, Ben. My bad.
No worries. That's very common. I guess the price for me would probably be like $225. But then what do you get for $225, right? So
for a starter home, okay.
Yeah, the price is the price, but I think the problem is wages. Because I'm an electrician. I started probably about 11 years ago. So as a first year, you make half the journeyman wage. I was making $19.50, and it was $39 journeyman rate. I make about 41 now. That's 10 years.
Okay. Right.
So when the wage doesn't move, you can inflate the market for anything you want. If the wage matches it, it's fine. That's the price. But when wages don't go up, then you start to have this big gap between wages and what you can afford, right? So anyways, that's sort of my take on it. I'd like to hear, I'm obviously not an economist, so I'd like to hear the take on other people's opinion on like what that's about. And then for rent, right now I'm paying rent $12.50, and I'm getting by. Obviously, no problem. But I mean,
and $12.50 for one bedroom? For a one bedroom?
Yeah, this is like a basement suite.
Okay.
Yeah, one bedroom, and they're probably about. You get not a lot for about $13.50, but it's good. I'm a single guy, so I'm fine. But like if you're a family and you're like I say a single mother or single father, whatever. And you need 2 bedrooms or 3 bedrooms, that goes up significantly, and it starts to go into the place where you can't afford it. And then you got groceries, everything on top of it. Everything's, however much percentage more to buy, everything's so much more expensive nowadays. And nothing for the wage has matched it so far. So I think that's the main issue, right? So that's just my thing.
Great stuff. Good take. Thank you, Ben. In Calgary, be right back. We're on our way on Talkback. 2 lines available there. Why don't you grab one? Talking about housing affordability today. 1-bedroom apartments, starter homes. Join the discussion on News Radio.
Have something on your mind you want everyone to know?
Call now.
Hello.
1-833-668-2577.
It's Talkback on Now You Know with Rob Snow.
Housing affordability, our topic of the day. We're talking about 1-bedroom apartments. What's the rent on a 1-bedroom apartment that you would think would be affordable? And starter homes. Think of a starter home. What would you consider to be an affordable starter home? 1-833-668-2577 to Truro, Nova Scotia. Brian is up next. Hello, Brian.
Hello, how are you?
I'm good, Brian. How's Truro, Nova Scotia today?
Sunny and warm.
Sunny and warm. We'll keep it that way, sir, because I'll be driving right past Truro, Nova Scotia on Monday on my vacation. So you make sure you have some good weather for me.
Drop in for lobster.
There'll be lobster where I'm heading. I'm heading to Marguerite, sir, so shouldn't have too much trouble. But there
Marguerite,
you go.
no, you'll have lots of lobster there.
Yes.
I want to be the devil's advocate for a sec. You said starter homes in Nova Scotia, statistics show they're like $237.
Starter home in Halifax. Now, I don't know about province-wide. This one just breaks it down by city, and it measures 50 cities.
Okay.
And the number for Halifax is 248. 248.5.
Okay.
Yeah.
I think Statistics Canada and a lot of people are padding their numbers to make themselves look good. I'll be honest with you. Even the seniors complexes, the little houses they all build together, in groups of 8 and 10. In Nova Scotia, in the country, by Truro, they're going for $400,000. There's not a house in the province, unless it's an outhouse, that's going for $240,000. And so I think these real estate people, and I think the government as well, I think all these companies and groups are padding their numbers to make themselves look viable. And it's wrong, because there's not. If there was a house, I have 2 sons in the military, and they can't afford houses. And if there was a house available for $241,000, they'd be grabbing it.
Yeah, 248. Yeah, so just shy of 250. Yeah, just shy of 250.
Let's go 265.
Yeah.
If there was houses available, new little houses available for 265, people would be eating them up, but they are not available. I don't know where these
this
numbers
is
are
what I was
from.
wondering, and it's kind of a question that I have. Like, let's say I'm living in Halifax, I get pre-approved for a mortgage of $250,000. Okay, that's all I can borrow from the bank. What can I get in Halifax?
You can get an outhouse.
Can I get a condo? Can I get a 1-bedroom condo, do you think?
I don't know about condos, but I doubt it. Not downtown Halifax. Condos are going for, I heard, $3,000 and $4,000 for a 1-bedroom a month.
Wow.
So, but a house in Halifax there's not many houses on the peninsula, and if it's a house downtown, say in Yonge Street or whatever, down in that area, they're going for $1 million. Those old homes. Those old down by Spring Garden Road and all.
Yeah, well, those aren't starter homes. I mean, if you're living off Spring Garden Road, you're not living in a starter home, right?
Then like the guy that was previous to you, where are you getting a starter home? Like in downtown Halifax, you're getting apartments.
Well, so, I knew a lot of the guys that I went to high school with, for example, live in Enfield, which is not far from where you are in Truro. Right, that was a very popular spot, fast-growing spot, like 20 years ago. Right? Could I get a house in Enfield for $250,000? No,
$500,000.
$500,000.
You can get a basic house for $500,000.
Wow.
Right. The starter.
That's crazy.
And see, that's what bothers me about this. We're in a crisis here, and nobody's being honest.
Okay.
As far as immigration, as far as anything, we're not being honest. And like I said, for $250,000, I'd like to find that starter home, because I got 2 sons that are looking for homes. So,
all right. Thank you, Brian. Thank you, Brian. Yeah, going to move along here. Yeah, let's go to Nicole is on the line also from Halifax today. Hello, Nicole. Hi, Nicole. Are you with me?
I am. Hi, how are you?
Hi, I'm great. Great to hear from you. What do you think?
Well, we live in a house just outside of Halifax. We around the Waverly Fall River area, and this is not our starter home, but our starter home we paid just over $200,000 for about 14 years ago, and very, very small property, but we like the area. Now, okay. I have a family. There's 4 of us, and we had to buy a fixer-upper, and we paid over $600,000, and there's still so much work to be done to this house. So I mean, to me those numbers have just exploded over the last 10 years. It's really quite unbelievable. But my main reason for calling is, and I think it's very interesting, is all of these high rises are going up and these rental properties are going up. I can't imagine that these corporations are doing this for the good of the people, out of the goodness of their heart. They're obviously into it to make a profit, and sure. Probably a pretty significantly big profit. So I'm just wondering, is there any way that the government can implement some sort of policies or, something that limits their ability to profit so much that they're making people, poor, can't afford, groceries or.
Well, I mean, one of the classic laws enacted by governments to control, say, rental prices is rent control.
Yeah.
Right.
I mean, I think it's really important.
Which can cause problems in the long term. Which can cause its own problems in the long term because it reduces the incentive to add to the supply of rental housing in the long term. It does keep a lid on rent increases for people who are occupying units at the time.
Yeah. I mean, I do agree with that. I mean, I do think that if you are building, complexes, yes, you should make money if that is your livelihood. But how much money are they making, and is it really necessary? I just think is there a cap on these builders and how much they can actually make and how much they can actually charge?
Right. For example, right now the province of Nova Scotia has rent control. It has a rent cap in place, and a landlord can only increase the rent 5% a year. It's set to expire 6 months from now at the end of this year. You're saying that something like that doesn't go far enough, right? You want a cap on. Yeah. All right, you want a cap on the actual rent that could be charged right from the outset, I guess, and a limit on the profit margin of a property developer. But will properties be developed if you do that kind of thing? But that's a question for another day. We'll stay focused here. Thank you, though, for your call, Nicole. I understand your frustration. Be right back with more of your calls on Talkback on News Radio.
Have something on your mind you want everyone to know?
Call now.
Hello.
1-833-668-2577.
It's Talkback on Now You Know with Rob Snow.
As we talk about housing affordability, one-bedroom apartments, what's affordable? What would you consider to be affordable for a rent for a one-bedroom apartment? Starter homes. It's an affordable starter home. Report on that out recently. Let me throw those numbers out at you again. On starter homes. Halifax, $248,450 starter home. What do you get for that in Halifax? $248,000. Or in Kitchener for $371,000. What kind of property do you get in Kitchener for $371,000? Or in Calgary for $275,000. $275,400 in Calgary. Say it's a starter home price, but what kind of property do you get for that? Just curious. Roland is in Calgary. Hello, Roland.
Hey, good morning. How are you?
Yeah, I'm great, Roland. Hope things are well where you are today.
Excellent. The
Good.
temperature came down a little bit from 31 to about 22.
Yes, it was a scorcher yesterday, that's for sure. Yeah.
Yep. But I'm going to say on a house, to purchase a house the first time around, it would be around the $400,000 mark. I would say is fair.
Okay.
For, you know, say for a 1,500 square foot house with a double garage.
Okay.
That to me would be, you know, on the money for the young people to start out with now.
400,000. Wow. Still a lot of money.
Well, it is. But, you know, the biggest problem, and nobody's addressed this, the biggest problem we have is the government. The government turns around and one fellow said, oh, you know, like we don't take enough money home. Well, because we get taxed beyond reality. You know, you take these tax rates that they're charging now. No wonder, I mean, an electrician should be able to go home here in Calgary with $100,000 a year right now today. Like I'm in the rental world doing renovations.
Okay.
And the average wage guy is $100,000 a year. But the taxes, they turn around, they're paying like 40% taxes.
Oh, sure.
So
Yeah.
You know, it just kicks the crap
And it's not
right
just
out of
that.
it.
It's not just the taxes that people are paying, but how much government is involved in the construction of new housing units, right? By way of development charges and land transfer taxes and just the application process to get a permit through City Hall and everything else, right? It's tens, if not hundreds of thousands of dollars. I'm talking per unit here.
Yeah. Well, my brother just built a 1,700 square foot house with a double garage on the farm to replace the old house. And by the time he was finished, and this is just east of Edmonton, County Strathcona, his permits were $5,500.
Right.
Like you
For
had
one
to have
house,
a permit to take out.
right?
Yeah, like one house. Like you had to have a permit to take the old septic tank out. You had to have a permit to put a new one in. It's just on and on. It never stopped, eh?
Yeah.
And that's where there's a problem. Like the government, they want to know too much. It's really none of their business. Like give, no, yes, I'm building a house. Here it is. Thank you very much. That's where we stop. Here's your $3,000 for the building permit. That's it. Adios. But they just keep coming back for more and more and more, and it never stops. And I see it when we do renovations. The same thing happens to us. You know, they keep coming back and wanting, no, we need a permit for this. Oh, we need a permit for that. And it just doesn't want to stop.
Yeah. Okay. I'm going to move along, Roland. Thank you. Roland thinks starter home, Calgary area, but nice sounding starter home by the sounds of things. $400,000. All right. John in Colebrook. Hello, John.
Hi, Rob. How are you?
Hi, John. Yeah. Where's Colebrook? Where is that?
Annapolis Valley.
Annapolis Valley. Okay. Awesome.
Yeah.
What do you think of the topic?
I fall into a couple categories there. I built a starter home a year ago. I just listed it for sale. But I bought the land raw, so just the woods. I had to put a septic and a well in the driveway in, which cost me $90,000. I was my own contractor to build 1,100 square foot house. It was only 3-bedroom, 1 bath, no garage. That cost me $300,000, and that was me doing all the contracting work. Now it's listed, and this is on a highway outside of a subdivision. It's listed for $430,000.
Oh my God!
That is a basic starter home. If I hired a contractor to do all the work and I continue to work and just go to work, I think I would have been over the 500 for a house that size.
Oh my gosh!
And the problem is, a lady spoke about prices going up. With my taxes with Kings County, the taxes were low starting out, but every 6 months now they go up to catch up to the house being finished, to the true value that they put the value on. So when people say about the rent going up 5%, with people that are landlords, they have to put it up 5% to cover the cost of the insurance and the taxes.
Oh yeah, insurance, materials, if windows need to be replaced, carpet needs to be replaced, utilities, you think these aren't going up 5% year after year after year, right?
Yeah, and I also
Property
have
taxes.
a rental. I have a rental. It's a 3-bedroom home. I lived in it for 20 years. I'm renting it for $2,000 a month, with nothing included. My rates went up on my mortgage. So when I was there, my mortgage was under $1,000. Now it's just over $1,100. My taxes went up, and my insurance pretty near doubled. So when people think that you're making a lot of money on the rent, I think some people may, some people aren't. But you're always
so you're renting it for $2,000 a month. What is it? A 1-bedroom, a 2-bedroom? What is it?
It's a 3-bedroom home in a subdivision. But
okay.
My taxes
All right.
My taxes are high. I have a septic and I have my own water, my own well, and I'm paying over $3,000 a year.
Okay. All right. Bit of run. Thank you. We're a bit over time, but that is incredible though, because you're off of a highway. You just built a house, and by the time you built it, it was in excess of $400,000, described as a pretty basic starter home. Makes me wonder where they're getting this number for Halifax from. Starter home, $248,000. Makes me wonder what you actually get for that kind of dollar in Halifax. Be right back though. Talkback on News Radio.
It's time to talk back
on Now You Know with Rob Snow.
Call now
and have your say.
1-833-668-2577.
Welcome to hour number 2 of Talkback. I'm Rob Snow. Great to be with you today. Our topic is housing affordability. Kicking this around for a couple of hours. 1-bedroom apartments and starter homes. What would the rent have to be on a 1-bedroom apartment to be affordable these days? What would the rent have to be on a 1-bedroom apartment to be affordable? And starter homes, however you want to define that, a starter home. What's an affordable starter home these days? We have a series of reports both on rents and starter homes out in the last little while. And the numbers, to say the least, are eye-popping. 1-833-668-2577, 1-833-668-2577, 123 lines available there for you. I would love to talk to you today. Let's get to Glenn in Calgary. Up next on Talkback. Hello, Glenn.
Okay, I have what I'd call a demonstration of just why things are going so crazy in the market.
Okay.
Back in 66, I bought a fixer-up, 150 acres, and a 2-bedroom fixer-up house for $9,000 in an area called Newton.
Okay.
I couldn't even fix it. It was so bad, but I wanted the land.
Okay.
5 years later, I got $250,000 for it because they had they changed it from agricultural land to buildings. In 1980,
so you
I
did
checked
very
on the
well.
price on it.
Yeah.
That just got me a 3-bedroom house, which I lost to taxes. And I didn't actually lose the taxes. I ended up selling before I lost it to taxes in the 80s. So in 1980, I checked on the price on that lot, and it was 150 acres. There is over $100 million worth of homes now.
Wow. Well,
do the math.
That's crazy. Yeah.
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 I mean, everything has skyrocketed in prices.
Sure.
But I am in construction, or have been until I retired. You go build a new building. You buy Chinese toilet seats, for example. The last time I was involved in buying, they cost 25 cents. They last for a year or two if you're lucky. They expect everybody, when they buy one of these new houses, to tear out the insides and make it over to their own choice. So there's millions of dollars worth of work and effort goes to throwaway instead of actually making houses that are livable.
Okay. Thank you, Glenn. Thank you. I don't think we really nailed down, the affordability price point for you, but and we're trying to keep it kind of narrow focused here. 1-bedroom apartment. I mean, again, let me run these, 1-bedroom apartments and what they say these 1-bedroom apartments are going for across the country these days, according to this report. In Halifax, like $2,000 a month, $2,000 a month for a 1-bedroom apartment in Halifax. In Kitchener, where did I see that? In Kitchener. I don't have it in front of me, right? Yeah, here we go. $1,848 a month in Kitchener for a 1-bedroom apartment. And you can do a little better in Calgary, $1,591. Let's round it up, call it $1,600 a month. But is that affordable? I mean, is that something you call affordable for a one-bedroom apartment. And then with the so-called starter homes, I mean, people aren't even really buying these numbers. Halifax, $248,000. Kitchener, $371,000. Calgary, $275,000. Like, I would be curious in Calgary, what do you get for $275,000? This report says you can get a starter home in Calgary for $275,000. I'm just curious, what does that starter home look like? Let's go to Rick. He's also in Calgary today. Hello, Rick. Hi, Rick. Are you with me?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, there we go. Rick, you and I have connected. Yeah, I'm good. Thank you. What's your opinion here?
Well, I was looking on Facebook I own my own home, right?
Okay.
And
yeah.
I bought 1,300 square feet. Nothing big, right? 1,280 square. The city assessment is $558,000 on that house.
Wow. Okay.
Okay, and a starter home, as you were saying, up in Skyview, there's nothing in Calgary for a starter home. That might be a townhouse, and trust me, that's about a 700 square foot townhouse if you're lucky for $400,000.
Okay. Yeah. Okay.
So that's way out, and it's a town. No home in Calgary is selling a house with a piece of land where you get a fenced yard for $400,000. Nothing.
Right. Okay.
So where that number's from? Even when I looked on Facebook the other day, I saw shared accommodation in an apartment at $1,100 to share just a room.
Shared accommodation. Yeah.
Shared accommodations. So you're right on the money, 100% for the $1,500. And trust me, those aren't nice places. Those aren't the best of the best for $1,500.
Right.
They're livable, but then the wages don't match to rent that here.
Okay.
So $400,000. I'd love to know. Hell, I'd sell my house and buy that, and I'd have $150,000 in the bank. Like seriously, where do you find a house for $400,000? It's not
even $400,000. Okay. Yeah. All right. Thank you. Well, just like that, we're off and running with hour number 2 of Talkback. Hope you'll join the discussion in this hour of our program. Share your opinions, please. We're talking about housing affordability today on News Radio.
Have something on your mind you want everyone to know?
Call now.
Hello.
1-833-668-2577.
It's Talkback on Now You Know with Rob Snow.
Welcome back to Talkback in the home stretch here, where we've been talking about housing affordability. We've been talking about one-bedroom apartments. We've been talking about a new report that's out on starter homes and what the rent would have to be for a one-bedroom apartment. Think about the one-bedroom apartments that you've rented over the course of your lifetime. What's a affordable rent these days for a one-bedroom apartment? What's the price of a starter home, for example? What would you consider a starter home? What's an affordable price for a starter home? 1-833-668-2577. 1-833-668-2577. 1, 2, 3, 4 lines available there for you. Wait, won't be too long at all. We'll fit in before we wrap things up for Now You Know for the day. Mike in Calgary on the line. Hello, Mike. Thanks for calling, Mike.
Hey, Rob. How are you doing today?
Just great, sir. Thank you so much.
Glad to hear it. So I'm 36 years old. I live in Calgary. I work in, a development adjacent industry. So I get to see a lot of the builds as they're occurring. I work with developers. And some of the big issues that I see for young folks my age and below is some of the points your previous caller brought up with amenities, everything has to be marble countertops, etc. One of the big issues I see is that the builders themselves, these are profit-driven buildings, right? You could take a lot for $200,000. You could build something worth $400,000, but they want to pay for the marble countertops and get their markups, right? They're building for affordability is not building for profitability, right? So you see a lot of these new homes popping up, and the the thing I noticed, their builds are called luxury builds, right? No one's coming in and putting in vinyl. And it's not that folks wouldn't buy them, but you can get a heck of a better markup if you have better looking faucets, if you have marble countertops, if you choose the more expensive laminate, etc. And what it ends up doing is it ends up selling it to a higher market. So folks who are looking for affordable housing, they can't afford this, but the people who are willing to use real estate as their investment, you've had a couple callers already on today who are, I own 2, 3, 4 additional homes and I rent them out and I get this extra cash on the side. The people who are renting those and at, profit rates, they're not just paying your mortgage. They're paying your mortgage plus 10, plus 15% because you're looking for that return on your investment.
They want some cash flow too, right?
Exactly, right? I mean, who doesn't these days, right?
Sure.
So there's a lot of issues with trying to find affordability where builders are even willing to build it because they're looking for their cash flow. Everyone's looking for their cash flow. And I think the major problem that Canadians are having countrywide is that real estate is one of our most it's our greatest GDP kind of investment strategy for those who can afford it. And it doesn't trickle down. It doesn't sort of help the people below. And I think the issue with folks my age and below is, the old social contract. We can't get starter homes that match even what our parents had. What was a starter home for you back in your 30s?
Back in my 30s, 20 years ago, maybe 175.
175, and it was probably a bungalow
in a big city, and that'd be in the big city. That'd be in the big city, like Ottawa. I was in Ottawa 20 years ago. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So, starter homes now in Calgary are row houses with separate basement suites, so that you can sort of pack more people in. There's a process called an HGO right now, where you take one parcel and you build 5 units on it. So your single parcel, and now you've got 10, 12 people living in the space that a single starter family. I mean, I've got a young kid in my life. I've got my wife, and we still rent. And looking around for something that is affordable. It gets further and further each year as we pay these high rent prices, which slow us down from saving up.
That's right.
And, we find ourselves backpedaling regularly and looking for ways to cut costs, to put more away. And then, the next year comes around and your rent went up again another 5% because the property value went up, the insurance rates went up. And you start wondering, is it even viable?
Right. Am I ever getting off this hamster wheel? Right. Yeah.
Absolutely. So I think that's one of the big issues that we struggle with. And I think it really comes down to the fact that Canada as a whole, we don't have other means of really producing income from ourselves other than the necessities that people need to live. And it's kind of a harsh reality for folks out there.
Okay. Thank you. Very well thought out and reasoned there, Mike. Thanks for the call today. To Kitchener today. Kevin is on the line from Kitchener. Hi, Kevin. Thanks for calling. You're on the air.
Hey, Rob. Listening to your show. It's about affordability. And the one thing I keep hearing over and over is people saying, no, those numbers, they can't be correct. You're saying price in Kitchener, 3 whatever it was. And that definitely, those are not realistic numbers.
371,400, according to this report from Point 2 Homes released on June 20th.
I think if you went back and asked those people to report, those are probably affordable prices, not what you can buy for. Because the reason I'll say that is in 93, I had bought a house. I was making $30,000 a year. and I bought a house for $126,000. So $30,000 a year. Bought a house for $126,000. Today, makes $75,000 per year. If you do the math at 4.2, that brings you to about $323,000. That would be affordable housing.
Right.
But you can't buy a home for that price.
You can't buy a home for that price in Kitchener? Any kind of, you could probably get, what, could you get a condo or a townhome or something like that in Kitchener for that?
No, you couldn't even come close. So I think
Really?
the data is probably realistic what would be affordable for those provinces. Not because you can't buy that.
Well, the purpose is, the reason that this firm did this report is it wanted to analyze what kind of income would be needed for a starter home, and it defined a starter home as half the going rate of the median price of the home sales in that market. And it says in Kitchener, $371,400 would be half the median price. And the income that would be the income that would be required, it says, even with a 20% down payment, is $93,000 a year.
Yeah. Yeah, that's
big money.
Even that's affordable housing for the price, but nobody can afford that anymore.
Right. And this report also said in most cities, what's deemed to be, say, a starter home, people can't afford the starter home on the salaries that they have, and in the cities where they could, there just aren't any homes available at that price. There's zero inventory. Zero inventory.
Yeah, agreed.
Yeah, it's pretty crazy, isn't it?
It is. It's out of reach. But I'm just using the math of what I made back then times 4.2. That was 126, and you at a rate today times 4.2. You're not even at the halfway mark for a starter home.
Yeah, and as for one bedrooms, because I've also been talking about one bedrooms, if you're in the market for a one bedroom. In Kitchener, it says $1,848 a month for a one bedroom in Kitchener.
Yeah, and if that's pointing towards condos, then you have condo fees, and then you're out. Then you can't even afford that because those have skyrocketed over the years too.
Yeah. Okay.
I don't know where the heck you would find for that kind of number.
Yeah. All right. Thank you. Yep. Good to hear from you today. In Kitchener, Ontario. I mean, I've rented a lot of places over the course of my lifetime. I mean, too many to count. I have lived in total dumps. I mean, places so bad, in neighborhoods so bad, I'd be embarrassed to show my mother where I was living at the time. And I've lived in other places that were kind of like palaces in the sky, and everything in between. I've had roommates. I've lived alone, but I'll tell you what. No matter the place that I've rented, I never paid the kind of rents people are having to pay now. I mean, these numbers have been this way for several years now, but when these reports come out, I am still taken aback when I see the kinds of rents that are being charged in the major metropolitan areas of the country. I don't know how people do it. I'm not sure I could do it if I found myself suddenly needing a new place to live. Like $2,000 a month for a one-bedroom apartment in Halifax. And that's just the average. I mean, maybe some people are doing better than that, but it means a lot of people are paying a lot more than that because this is the average rent. I asked my wife this morning, because she went to university in Halifax long time ago, how much was your rent, honey, when you're in that little apartment in Halifax? She rented a one-bedroom apartment in what's known as the Fairview area of Halifax. Way back, we're talking early 1990s here. One-bedroom apartment, no roommates, Fairview in Halifax. You know what the rent was? $375 a month. $375 a month. Couldn't you go for that now? Now, in the mid-90s, long time ago, I get it. I wasn't working in the radio industry. I was working in the food service industry, just trying to get by, But I managed to afford a one-bedroom apartment, and it wasn't even half bad. $575 a month, I remember. It was like 1993, 1994, something like that, in a high-rise. One bedroom, one bathroom, nothing fancy. Parking was extra, but I didn't own a car at the time. I just had my bus pass. But you managed to do it. I was only making maybe, I don't know, $12 an hour or something. These rents are crazy. $2,000, one-bedroom apartment in Halifax, Nova Scotia. It's outrageous. It's outrageous. It really is. Be right back. I'm Rob Snow. This is Talkback. This is News Radio.
Have something on your mind you want everyone to know?
Call now.
Hello.
1-833-668-2577.
It's Talkback on Now You Know with Rob Snow.
Yeah, winding things down here for Talkback today. We've been talking about affordable housing. We've been talking about renting one-bedroom apartments and the going rates for starter homes. Does a starter home even exist? A lot of people don't really think a starter home even exists anymore. I think if you want, according to these reports that I've been citing, rentals.ca, Point2 Homes, CMHC, if you really want affordable housing, you should learn to speak French. This report says Trois-Rivières, for example, $133,000 for a starter home. Lévis, that's not far from Quebec City, fast-growing area of the Quebec City area, $164,000. Or you can move to the prairies. Winnipeg, $168,000. Saskatoon, $187,000. Regina, $155,000. Or St. John's, Newfoundland, great town, St. John's, Newfoundland, $153,000. As for more affordable rents, St. John's, of all the big cities in Canada, is pretty much the bargain for one-bedroom apartments, and it's still $1,000 a month for a one-bedroom apartment. St. John's, Newfoundland. Lloydminster, around the same, $1,077. Medicine Hat, $1,200. In Medicine Hat, $1,200 a month. Fort McMurray. I've always been surprised. Fort McMurray, the housing seems to be relatively affordable. $1,245 a month for a one-bedroom, and Saskatoon, $1,255 a month. The top four most expensive rental markets, no surprise, all in BC. All in BC. Northern Vancouver, Burnaby, Coquitlam. One bedroom's going for between $2,300 and $2,600 a month. $2,300 to $2,600, and they're still running you about $2,300 a month in Toronto. One bedroom apartment. Now, Curtis is our new producer here on Now You Know and Talkback. You've lived all over the place. I mean, where do you go to find cheap rent, Curtis?
Nowhere.
Nowhere.
I don't know, man.
You lived in the Yukon, you said, right?
Yes,
Yukon.
and that was with a roommate. Yes. In terms of build quality, it wasn't great compared to here in Calgary, Ontario, where I grew up. It's not up to par, but then again, you have to kind of deal with that. It's growing up. You mentioned it too. You lived in bad neighborhoods, bad places. It happens.
Oh yeah. My buddies used to say, and come and pick me up to go play golf, and they'd be like, "Yeah, we're gonna go pick up Rob down in the ghetto."
Yep.
Down in the war zone. But you do what you need to do.
Yeah, right? And another thing too, like build quality too. Like that's something people want right away out of college. Like people my age, they come out of college, they want the world, they want marble countertops, they want laminate flooring, they want AC, all this stuff. So
creepers.
And if you're moving
I'm in my 50s, I still don't have any of that stuff.
Yeah, and that's the
what
thing.
What does that say about me?
Yeah, if you're moving east to west, AC out here, that was a big cultural change. We don't have AC out here for many places.
Okay, all right. Well, look, I thought the discussion went really well today. I thank everyone who took part, and we'll be back again tomorrow with brand new topics, more of your calls, and always the latest breaking news. I'm Rob Snow. This is News Radio.